They say a scream can shatter glass, but Cassandra's scream did more than that. It shattered a life. He tried to rape me. Her voice tore through the Darlington estate like a blade through silk. It wasn't a cry for help, it was an explosion. The kind that made the polished halls fall silent. The kind that made servants drop trays. Maids freeze mid-step. And it made Arthur Darlington stoic cold. Arthur run. He hadn't run since the night his first wife died. He found her there. Cassandra, his second wife, standing beneath the chandelier in her torn silk robe. Her shoulder bare where the fabric had been clawed. Her mascara had carved rivers down her cheeks. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes, they were too focused, too sharp. And beside her, frozen on the staircase, like a portrait cursed into stone, was David, his son, his only son. Arthur looked at Cassandra, then David, and back again. And that's when she said it again, calmer now, more deliberate. "Your son tried to rape me." The words hit harder than any bullet. For a moment, there was no air, no movement, no time. David's lips parted, but no sound came out. He looked at his father, not as a boy, but as a son, reaching through the void for something familiar, for belief, for protection, for love. But Arthur's eyes, once warm with paternal pride, had turned cold, not with rage, but with judgment. It was the eyes of a man already decided. "Is it true?" Arthur asked. David's chest rose and fell like a boy drowning on dry land. He stepped forward, voice shaking but defiant. "No, father, I swear on mother's grave. Don't let him say her name," Cassandra cried, collapsing into sobs, collapsing into her role. And that was it. Arthur stepped forward and struck David across the face. The sound echoed through the marble like thunder inside a tomb. "Get out," he said. "You are no longer my son." The door slammed behind him like the ceiling of a coffin, and then it rained. The sky wept, but David didn't. He stood in the same driveway where he once learned to ride a bicycle, now soaked in betrayal. The world had flipped in a breath. He was 17, just a boy. But the boy died right there, under the weight of his father's hand and a woman's lie. He wanted to scream, to punch the earth, but he didn't. He walked. Each step away from the estate was a severing a cord. Cut a tie burned his home, his family, his name gone. He wandered the city, soaked and stripped of more than just his clothes. He knocked on doors, friends, relatives, anyone. But they had all heard Cassandra's side. Cassandra with her trembling hands and perfect tears. And one by one, they turned him away. Some closed the door gently, others slammed it. The polite ones said they were sorry. The cruel ones didn't bother. He slept in bus stations, under bridges, in alleys, reeking of piss and memory. His fingers numbed by the cold. His stomach twisted in on itself. Once a man spat on him. Another time, a woman gave him $1 without looking him in the eye. And through it all, the lie clung to him like a second skin. He was brilliant once. Teachers said he could be anything. His mother had called him her star. But the world doesn't care for stars that fall. David worked where he could. Dishwashing, trash hauling, lifting crates. Always under different names, always hiding. He stole books from charity bins, libraries, cafes, not for escape, for revenge. He read psychology, finance, law. He studied power, not the kind that comes with a badge, but the kind you never see until it's already crushed you. Every sleepless night was a brick, every humiliation a nail. He was building something, not peace, not forgiveness, something darker. And one night, years later, he stood before a cracked mirror behind a rundown diner. His clothes were rags, his hands were calloused, His eyes were no longer soft. One day, he whispered, "The world will know I was innocent, and when that day comes, Cassandra will beg for death." His reflection didn't blink. "And my father," his voice trembled, not with fear, but with fire. "He will wish he had never struck me." The boy was gone. David Darlington had died in the rain. In his place stood something colder. Sharper David Cross was born, and so the world turned. He moved through cities like a shadow, picking up skills like weapons, coding, investing, languages, manipulation. His brilliance returned, but now it was edged with steel. He didn't climb the ladder. He built one from the bones of every man who tried to step on him. They said he came out of nowhere, that he was a genius, a ghost, a myth in the world of finance. His rise was meteoric, unexplained, unchallenged. But David wasn't chasing wealth. He was building an arsenal behind the suits and the penthouse views. He was still hunting. Cassandra's name was harder to find now, but he knew where she was. Arthur too. He watched from afar as Arthur shrank, his once mighty frame bent with age and guilt. Cassandra still smiled in magazines, wore diamonds to galas, kissed babies for charity. But David knew it was coming. He hired investigators, hackers, spies. Every secret Cassandra ever buried, he dug up. Offshore accounts, bribes, stolen assets. Even the truth about Elaine, his mother. The woman Cassandra claimed to mourn while she siphoned her legacy away. And then a miracle, Rachel. She had been a maid in the Darlington estate. She vanished the same night David was thrown out. But he found her, living under a fake name in a cottage in Wales, older, quieter, trembling with guilt. "I saw it," she whispered. She tore her own robe. She practiced the scream. I should have said something. David didn't comfort her. He didn't need an apology. He needed evidence. He left with a signed affidavit and a video. And yet still he waited. Because revenge wasn't a slap, it was a symphony, a masterpiece. And every note had to be perfect. Cassandra would not just fall. She would unravel, and Arthur, his father, he wouldn't just lose his pride. He would lose everything. 10 years. 10 years since the lie. 10 years since the rain. And now the skies were clear. The Darlington Foundation gala was Cassandra's grand return. The guests were glamorous. The champagne flowed, and as she raised her glass to speak, the ballroom's screens flickered. A video played Rachel's face, her voice steady, her story true. She lied. She said she ruined him. Gasps, murmurs. The room trembled, and then David walked in. He wore black. His eyes were ice. He said nothing at first, just stood staring. Then he spoke. 10 years. He said, "I waited 10 years. I bled for your lie." He turned to Arthur. "And you didn't even ask me if it was true." Arthur stood trembling. "David, you left me to die," David said. "You believed her over your own blood." The room was silent. "And for that, you will lose everything you built with mine." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. He just walked out. Behind him, the world began to burn. The silence didn't end when David walked out of the ballroom. It followed him like a ghost, down the marble steps into the black car that waited with military precision, and all the way back to the penthouse that crowned his empire. It wasn't victory he felt. Not yet. It was detonation, the moment after the blast, before the dust settles and the screams begin. Inside the ballroom, panic bloomed like wildfire. Cassandra collapsed, not with elegance, but with the graceless thud of someone who knew the mask had cracked, and the face beneath was rotten. Arthur just stood there. He didn't help her, He didn't move. He simply stared at the screen that had gone black, his reflection dimly caught in its shine, like a man trying to see himself in a shattered mirror. The headlines came within hours. Darlington heiress exposed for fabricated rape claim. David Cross revealed to be estranged, son of Arthur Darlington. Decade-old lie topples power couple. The press devoured them like wolves at a feast, and David fed them more. The next morning, court filings hit the newsstands. Cassandra was being investigated for fraud, embezzlement, and perjury. The documents David released, her secret ledgers, blackmail records, and accounts tied to estates meant for Elaine. Darlington were meticulous. Clean Lethal Arthur was named as a negligent trustee. The foundation's board demanded his resignation within the week. Stocks plummeted. Charities severed ties. Friends became shadows. And David, he didn't flinch. He didn't celebrate. He simply watched and waited. Cassandra tried to run. She booked a flight under a pseudonym. He cancelled it. She transferred money to an account in Monaco. He froze it. Every door she opened was already nailed shut. David had bought the firm, managing her properties. He liquidated them all and funneled the proceeds into a foundation for victims falsely accused of sexual crimes. Her name was no longer whispered with admiration, but spat like venom. And Arthur, he tried to fight it at first, held press conferences, mumbled about misunderstandings, claimed he was misled by grief. But no one believed him, not when the evidence was so damning, not when the world saw his son standing with poise and power, while he cowered behind glass and regret. David made no public statements, no interviews, just silence. And in that silence, their world collapsed. Cassandra moved from hotel to hotel, each one cheaper than the last. Every time she walked down a street, she felt eyes on her. Not admiration, but judgment. Not fame, but infamy. She dyed her hair. She wore sunglasses even at night, but none of it mattered. The worst came not from the world outside, but from within. The letters started arriving. Anonymous, no return address, each envelope a scalpel. The first was a photograph of her standing in front of a mirror practicing a scream. The same scream that damned David. It had been taken in secret, somehow, somewhere, but she knew it was real. The second was a video clips of her past lovers, secret deals, her voice promising ruin for anyone who crossed her. She vomited when she watched it. The third, just a single sentence scrawled in blood-red ink. Do you remember how it felt to lie? You will feel worse to die. She screamed then, not from pain, from memory, from knowing that somewhere out there, the boy she had tried to bury was not only alive, but watching, and David was watching, always. He didn't want her to die, not quickly. He wanted her to feel what he had felt, that slow, soul-crushing descent into invisibility. So he waited until she had no more strength to fight, and then he took her. It wasn't violence, it was elegance. A van, a needle, silence. She woke up in a house that looked almost exactly like the Darlington estate. The same chandeliers, the same paintings, the same scent of lavender and old paper. But something was wrong. The windows didn't open. The doors didn't lead outside. The air was too still. It was a replica. A cage built from memory. A prison painted with nostalgia. For days she wandered the halls screaming. No one came. Only echoes answered her. The food was dry bread. The water was barely clean. The only sound was Arthur's voice, playing on loop from hidden speakers, snippets from old conversations, moments of tenderness twisted into mockery. David watched it all. Through hidden cameras, he catalogued her every breakdown, the moment she screamed at the mirror, the moment she collapsed in the hallway, begging for forgiveness from ghosts, the moment she confessed whispering to no one. I lied because I hated him, because he loved his mother more than me. She tried to take her own life once. David let her wake up again, strapped to a bed, staring at a screen playing a loop of one image. His face the moment she screamed. Meanwhile, Arthur sat in a dull two-room apartment. No estate, no title, no legacy. He hadn't touched the bottle of whiskey on the table in weeks. He barely ate. His name was on every tabloid, not as a titan, but a coward, a father who chose a lie over his son. He dreamt of Elaine, of David as a boy, of that night when he raised his hand, and everything changed. Then one night he did something he never thought he would do. He went to David. He arrived unannounced, wet, gaunt, trembling. The guards didn't stop him. David had told them not to. Arthur was shown to a room. He sat in silence for nearly 30 minutes before David appeared. Calm, unhurried, tea in hand. David, Arthur began, voice rough. David raised a hand. No apologies, not yet. Arthur sat. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Arthur broke. I failed you, he said. I let her destroy you. I didn't protect you. I didn't even ask. David stared. Why? He asked softly. Why did you believe her? Arthur's hands shook. Because she reminded me of Elaine, and because you were 17, and I was afraid you might have made a mistake. I was weak, and I'm sorry. David didn't blink. You threw me into the street like garbage, he said. Do you know what it's like to go hungry, to be cursed by strangers because the only man who could have cleared my name was too cowardly to listen? Arthur nodded. Yes, I know. Now I feel it every day. David didn't cry. That part of him was gone. He simply slid a folder across the table. She's not dead, he said, but she will be. And you'll get to live. Not because you deserve it, but because I want you to see what your silence cost. Inside the folder were photos, videos, every detail of Cassandra's imprisonment, her screams, her confessions. Arthur's lips trembled. David, this isn't justice. No, David said, rising. It's balance. Arthur left without another word. But that night, he did something unexpected. He took the folder and sent it to the press. Uncut, unfiltered, the full truth. The media firestorm was immediate. This time, David was the hero, the survivor. Cassandra was no longer just disgraced. She was annihilated. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal laid bare. David didn't comment. He didn't show up on television. He just watched. And Cassandra, she woke in darkness again. Her lips cracked, her skin pale, her voice gone. David stood before her at last. No cameras, no speakers, just him. She could barely lift her head. Do you understand now? He asked. She nodded. You destroyed a boy for nothing, he said. Not for power, not for money, just to control a man who trusted you. I was jealous, she whispered, of his mother, of you. He loved you more than me. I didn't think you'd survive. David knelt. I did survive, he said, and I became everything you feared. He handed her a bottle of water, not from mercy, but because he needed her awake. A screen flickered on, showing her face. Every channel, every headline, every shred of her legacy burned. There's no one left for you, he said. You'll never see sunlight again. You'll never hear another voice that isn't mine. You'll die here, forgotten. Her scream pierced the silence, but it was the scream of a woman who knew she'd already died 1,000 deaths. David walked out, the door locked behind him, and outside. For the first time in a decade, sunlight warmed his face. He didn't smile. He didn't weep. He just breathed because the monster was caged and the father was broken. And for now, that was enough. The world hailed him as a symbol of resilience. Magazines featured him on their covers. Awards poured in from foundations, legal reform committees, human rights organizations. David Cross, the man who exposed a decade-long lie. Cameras caught him walking into charity galas, smiling faintly, handshakes firm but brief. They praised his brilliance, his elegance, his control, but they never saw the silence he carried, like a second skin, or the memories stitched into the seams of his tailored suits. The truth was, David had won, but not without cost. He never returned to the Darlington estate, not even when the courts awarded him legal ownership. It stood abandoned for months, a crumbling relic of betrayal and silence, until he ordered it to be burned down. No ceremony, no cameras, just flames and ash. In its place, he built something new. A public library named after his mother, Elaine. Darlington, late at night, he visited once alone, cloaked in shadows, to watch children read beneath chandeliers where once lies had echoed. Their laughter drifted out into the street light and free. He didn't enter. He stood in the dark, like a man watching a world he could never quite step back into. Arthur never fully recovered, and never. He faded in silence, living modestly in a corner apartment where the wallpaper peeled and the past pressed in like fog. He never reached out again. David had given him no room for reconciliation, only the burden of truth. Still, in his final months, Arthur clung to one act of redemption, leaking Cassandra's full confession and the evidence of her deception to the media. He didn't do it to save himself. He knew it wouldn't. He did it so that perhaps the boy he'd abandoned might one day believe he had tried in the end to do something right. When Arthur died, it wasn't headline news, just a short obituary, no fanfare, no funeral crowd. Only a note left behind in a drawer, handwritten, folded carefully. I tried to make it right. I failed, but I loved you. David read it once, then placed it in a drawer and never opened it again. Cassandra, on the other hand, was a ghost no one wanted to speak of. Her body was never found. Her face never appeared again in public. Rumors whispered through the corners of the internet stories of a madwoman in a forgotten asylum who screamed in the night for forgiveness from a name no one remembered. Nurses passed her cell without looking in. Staff referred to her only by a number. No one came to visit, and no one asked questions. Somewhere, she remained locked in the replica of the home she had once ruled. Now her tomb. Her power had been her voice, her beauty, her lies. All stripped away, all silenced, and David continued. He grew his empire, not for greed, but for leverage. Every corporation, every investment, every contract signed was a brick in the fortress of a man who would never be weak again. He expanded the foundation for the falsely accused, quietly funded shelters, donated to rehabilitation centers for broken families, but he never sought fame, never stepped into the spotlight longer than necessary. In public, he was flawless. In private, he was alone. He never married, never dated seriously. He was kind but distant, respectful but unreachable. Some women tried to break through, drawn by the tragedy in his eyes. None succeeded. He feared what might be passed on, not just in blood, but in burden. He'd seen what betrayal could do to a soul. He carried it like a scar beneath his ribs, invisible, but always tender. He told himself there was a risk he couldn't take. Not again, not after surviving what he had. And yet there were nights when he stood by the window of his penthouse, staring down at the glowing city, and wondered what it might have been like. A different life. One where Arthur had asked instead of struck. One where Cassandra had never been allowed through the gate. One where he still bore his real name and the innocence that came with it. He sometimes thought about the boy he used to be. The boy who believed in bedtime stories and constellations, who trusted his father's hands to catch him When he jumped, that boy still lived somewhere inside him, but quieter now, older, wounded. 10 years after the gala, on the anniversary of his return, David went to the garden of the Elaine Darlington Library. Again, it was late evening. The sun dipped low, casting the trees in soft gold. He stood in silence behind a hedge, watching a young boy laugh as his father spun him around in the grass. The boy shrieked with joy. The man's face was tired but full of love. David felt something sharp twist in his chest. Not envy, not regret, but something deeper. A kind of mourning for what he knew he would never have. He turned before they could see him, his footsteps soft against the path. As he walked away, he thought of what he had built, of the power he now held, the justice he had enforced, the lives he had changed. He knew it mattered. He knew he had done what no one else could. But peace had never come. Not really. The wound was closed, yes, but not healed. He still carried the echo of rain on his skin, still saw the marble staircase, the torn robe, the moment his father chose silence. Some nights he woke in cold sweats, hearing Cassandra's scream, feeling again the weight of exile, the bite of hunger. Other nights he dreamt of Rachel's trembling voice, of the cracked mirror behind that diner, of swearing an oath to no one but his reflection. He never asked himself if it had been worth it. He didn't believe in such questions. He had done what was necessary. That was all. But even warriors get tired. One evening, he sat at his desk staring at a letter he had written but never sent. It was addressed to no one, or perhaps to the boy he used to be. You survived. You endured. But I'm sorry. I couldn't give you the peace you deserved, only the justice you needed. He folded it, placed it in the same drawer as Arthur's note, closed it softly. In time, people would forget the details, the scandal, the drama. New headlines would take their place. New heroes, new villains. But in quiet corners of the city, there were those who remembered the boy who walked into the storm alone and came back as a man no one could touch. And perhaps that was enough. Because in the end, David Cross didn't live for applause. He didn't need statues or songs. He had reclaimed the truth, exposed the lie. And in doing so, perhaps, just perhaps, he had saved others from suffering in silence. And though the scars remained, though he never truly found peace, he could breathe. He could walk freely through the world without hiding behind stolen names. He had made the name David mean something again. And that was the only revenge that ever mattered. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of David's unforgettable journey. A story of betrayal, survival, and the unrelenting pursuit of truth. We hope it moved you, made you think, and reminded you of the strength that lies within those who have been wronged. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful narratives just like this. And we truly love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and share how David's story made you feel. Your voice matters, and your perspective could inspire someone else. Until next time, thank you for watching.